Good evening and welcome to the November 20th, 2018 Millis School Committee meeting. I'm going to start with the roll call. I am Stephen Catalano, the chairperson. Kerry Roach, secretary.
Here.
Robin Briggs.
Here.
Mark Conroy.
Here.
Denise Gibbons is absent. Teacher reps. There is no teacher rep tonight. Student reps.
Here.
Drew O'Reilly. Okay. Jody, has anyone signed in for open session?
There is not.
Okay. I'd like to move things around a little bit. We'll do the action items after because we have guests. And so when we have guests, that means one of our teams won a championship. So Nancy, why don't you take it over? Oh, I'm sorry, the superintendent.
Actually,
discusses it.
yes, if we could do our something before we honor the team, I would like to call up Jessica Krause and her family to the center table.
You can sit.
Okay,
Yes, you can sit. And there's another chair behind you, or you can stand. That makes a nice picture right there. So congratulations, Jessica. You have been awarded the National School Development Council Award for Academic Growth and Student Leadership in Learning. Jessica has increased the rigor of her coursework throughout her years in the Millis Public Schools, has excelled in all of her classes, ranging from college prep honors and AP classes. Outside of the classroom, Jessica is an impressive athlete, a leader of her class, and a contributing member of the community. She's been on the winter and spring track teams throughout high school and is a fierce competitor, among others, on the varsity soccer team. For her senior year, she was chosen by her teammates to be one of the captains of the varsity soccer team, which is a reflection not only of her leadership, her skills, but her passion and tenacity for the sport she loves. This is contagious with her teammates. Jessie is president of the Student Council Executive Board this year and has held leadership positions in Student Council throughout high school. She is also president of the Peer Leaders Club. She's been a member of the Junior Leo's Community Service Club throughout high school, and she is a dedicated member of the Millis chapter of the National Honor Society. She has participated in several community service activities through her membership in these clubs, but also has sought ways to give back to her community on her own time, including mentoring and working as a Spanish tutor for younger students. This year, Jessie is organizing a 5K race in town to raise money for research for frontotemporal dementia. Jessie exemplifies admirable character and academic accomplishment, and she undoubtedly serves as a positive role model for the entire student body. Congratulations.
Thank
Congratulations.
Congratulations. And here is your and then we'll take pictures.
Want to do them in front? Yeah, you can be in the picture. Where do you want it? We'll do them with the superintendent and with the school committee as well. Okay. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3, cheese. One more time. 2, 3, cheese. Okay, school committee?
Okay, and everybody.
You got
I'm
it?
going to take one more
You
too.
got it?
Yep.
You good?
Hang on a minute. That needs to go this way. It's too small. 1, 2, 3. Hang on a minute. 1, 2, 3. Now I got to use my phone because I got to post the pictures. Minute ready, and 1, 2, 3. And one more time. Say cheese. Congratulations. You're all good. Thank you.
And what a wonderful. Okay. yes, we also have another group here that can come on up to join us around the table, including coaches.
Yeah, you can gather around, there's not going to be enough chairs.
Thank you all for coming during a busy week. But it was so exciting to have you become back-to-back state champions for the team that we wanted to get you here as quickly as we could to honor you this evening. It's a great accomplishment. You worked hard. You dominated in that last game, but you handled clearly all the other teams. I think one of the things I'm very proud of always is the character that you always show, that our teams show on the field, the sportsmanship, which is as important as the skill you clearly have. So congratulations.
So you're not on Facebook probably, but I will tell you that I'm friends with a lot of your parents on Facebook, and this town was very energized around your run to the championship and your repeat. So there were a lot of people very, very proud of you, and you should be proud of your accomplishments, the hard work, dedication, starting in the summer and ending in the close to the winter. You've earned it, and you should be proud of yourself. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Take our pictures.
Congratulations.
How do we do that?
Yeah,
Why don't you go to them?
we'll go to them.
Okay, we can like kind of squat. Yeah, we kind of squat.
I just don't want to know.
Okay, we're squatting.
Perfect, okay.
We're used to this.
Maybe stand behind stand behind the team, and the girls can crouch down.
Oh, a little more?
Put it on a little bit more. There we go.
Robin,
Oh, that's good, I got you, Robin.
My hands hurt.
I'm gonna count to 3 again, please. 1, 2, 3, cheese. One more time. 1, 2, 3, and cheese. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mia, where's the voice of women's girls soccer in Millis? Where's your father? When you win a championship, the voice, the media gets trophies.
oh yeah, he's here in spirit.
Tell him I was asking.
Okay.
Congratulations, everyone.
I don't know that it needs to go up. Dave, does this need to go back up?
Congratulations.
Oh, he's presenting.
Congratulations, coaches. Now back to the grind. The fun is over. Drew, you ready?
Yep.
Dave, we good? All right.
Thank you.
The room vacates, and now we get to the business. First action item is to consideration to approve the November 6, 2018 school committee meeting minutes. I'll take a motion. Someone without chocolate?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Ms. Brigg.
I move that we approve the meeting minutes from last meeting on September 11/6, 2018.
There's been a kind of a motion, there's been a second, and all in favor? Aye, motion carries. Okay. Next action item is to consideration to approve a $6,000 check from the IORIO, is that correct? IORIO Charitable Foundation. And in our packets is a memo from the business manager, Terry Wiggin, to the superintendent and the school committee. And it says attached, you'll find a letter from the Iorio Charitable Foundation, which issued a check to the Millis High School PTO. We don't have a PTO, but they're issuing it to the high school. Principal Mullaney contacted the foundation, informed them that Millis High School does not have a PTO, and asked what they wish to do with their generous donation. The foundation agreed that this could be deposited into the Millis High School gift account to be used on behalf of the Millis High School students. Because this gift exceeds $1,000, we have to approve the acceptance of the gifts. The Principal Mullaney will be sending a letter of thanks, and there is a recommendation to accept the donation and to have the $6,000 be spent to be used on behalf of Millis High School students. So if I get a motion? Mr. Conroy.
I make a motion that we accept the donation from the Iorio Charitable Foundation to Millis High School in the amount of $6,000 to be used on behalf of the Millis High School students.
A motion's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Okay.
I just had a quick question, a general question.
Yes.
Do we know what the Iorio Foundation is? I tried looking it up a step and didn't get, or how we
I'm not aware.
got connected.
I am not sure. I can ask Mr. Mullaney and get back to you.
They were very nice.
No, they were.
They're good people.
But I was looking to see like what they don't
Nothing.
really even have a letter.
They may be flying under the radar.
Yeah, no.
Silently giving donations. So did we vote? All in favor? Okay. We're all ayes. All right, next is the consideration to accept a $2,000 donation from I Am Strong Foundation. And the I Am Strong Foundation awarded a $2,000 donation to our school, and both the students and staff at the Millis High School appreciate, this is a letter to, I'm sorry.
It's
help
a
me with
thank
this.
you letter.
It's a
Yeah.
thank you letter.
What this donation does is it supports the training of our service dog, our therapy dog, Harry, who's been a wonderful addition to our school. If you haven't met Harry yet, I hope you get to, maybe during Thanksgiving or one of the games, because it's been delightful. A lot of training and a lot of expense goes into the training of these service dogs. So through NEADS, N-E-A-D-S, and I forget what that stands for, but it is the organization that provides the training for the service dogs. And the I Am Strong Foundation was formed in honor of Isabel, who was a student who took her life in 8th grade, and her legacy lives on in the I Am Strong Foundation. So we'd like to recommend accepting this donation, excuse me, to go to NEADS, which will not only help pay for our contribution to Harry's training, but continue to help other dogs be trained.
Is there any way Harry could come to a meeting?
Oh, that would be fun. Sure. Well, especially when they do an update on, so Erin Sullivan, our high school adjustment counselor, is the point person for Harry, and Harry lives with Erin, and she was instrumental in getting Harry to us, so I will check, and maybe
Not to inconvenience her, but it'd be nice to meet Harry.
There might be some time when it makes sense
Sure.
if they're presenting on social, emotional, or some aspect.
That would be awesome. Okay, so now we know what this is about. Can we get a motion to accept this donation?
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Briggs?
I move that we accept the $2,000 donation from the I Am Strong Foundation.
Motion been made and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Okay, that's the last action item. The next one is, we have no teacher rep, so student reps. Drew?
So as we just saw, the Millis girls varsity soccer team just won the state championship game. Also, winter sports are beginning on Monday the 26th. And tomorrow, Wednesday the 21st, there's a half day. And also, the Millis football team will be playing their annual Thanksgiving football game against Medway on Thursday the 22nd.
Thank you, Drew. All right, Next is time and learning, which is our athletics update.
And both Mr. Grant and Mr. Wiggins are here.
Wait, is the game home or away?
Away, you got a coupon on your desk. You've got a pass.
Yeah, you have tickets for the Medway football game at Medway.
We're still going Thursday morning as opposed
And if
to
you need,
Wednesday?
if you
Thursday
need
morning,
more
10 o'clock,
tickets,
yes.
let me know, because I have a
Not
couple
blinking.
extra.
It's not my call, but so it's easy for me to talk like that.
So as you guys get set up, this is the first, the school committee met 2 times this summer, and then had additional conversations about a strategic planning, a modified strategic planning process focused on budget and policy. And we are, so we are looking at many programs, and it'll take some period of time, but looking at programs from a total operating cost, and then when reviewing a program, identifying any policies that we need to implement or revise, and then just to get a better handle as we approach the budget, the FY20 budget process. So that's where we stand, and you gentlemen are the first ones to come through.
I've got the psychedelic spiraling wheel of death on my screen right here,
That-
Dave.
That is fine, take your time. Do not worry.
It is taking its time right now. I have done that, yes.
Did you silence your cell phone?
Silenced my cell phone.
Yes.
I plugged it into here. I've still got the spiraling. We may have to bring out the commander from behind the scenes to put the paddles on this. Plug it in. And it's doing
We
that.
broke it.
All I did was plug it in. Before I came up here, it was all set to go. I just click on view, present, and it would have come right on.
Yeah.
It was already up, actually. As soon as I plugged it in, it went to that. So I'm glad it's not me.
Knew we should have used a PC. Torch back up.
Mark?
We really actually did have a plan for this.
We have well, I have printed copies, and they have on the Google. They're on the Google.
On the Google.
It's forever the Google.
The Google.
The Google.
Should be coming in.
So calm I stay. I trust this with all my heart.
Are you guys going to pull up the memo, or is it?
No, this is a
It's a
this is-
slideshow.
This is a slideshow on there.
We're
We're starting
making
off showing you the
progress
growth
here.
of the program.
Hopefully is right. Now it just went back to that small screen again.
That's normal.
Okay. Says the Mac cannot connect to iCloud because of problem with cgrant@millisps.org. Okay. should be able to click. Thank you very much, sir.
Yep.
Go back to
You good, Dave?
present.
Okay.
There we go.
All yours, guys.
Okay.
So what I would like to do is give you a general overview of the different areas of growth and the needed areas of growth, and needed being field space, which we'll get to, and then where we're at growth-wise. No, that's not what it was just supposed to do. It just took off right out of my presentation. Dave might need you again. I can recite it, and we'll get it up here as quickly as we can. In terms of teams, 2003, we had 23 teams, not different sports, 23 teams. We now have 43 teams in 2018. Number of sports, and that slide's going to come up in a minute. There's our team slide right here. We had 23 teams in 2003. 2018, we were up to 43 teams. Number of sports, in 2003, we had 10 different sports. We now have 16 different sports being offered to our students. Number of participants, in 2003, we had 266 total, 3 seasons combined, 266. We now have 574 total participants in 2018. What does that look like in terms of success? There are two kinds of, you have your finalist who unfortunately loses the state championship game, and you have your state champion. Prior to 2003, we did not lose any state championships. From 2003 to 2018, we played in 5 that we lost, so we were finalists. Prior to 2003, we won 4 state championships, 3 in football and 1 in track. From 2003 to 2018, we have won 18 state championships. So we've played for 23, and we've won 18 state championships. Field usage. I know this is a semi-sensitive topic, but it's getting more serious by the day, most recently with our girls soccer team, where we were very fortunate to have a great record that earned us home field advantage, and we were to play our games on another field. In 2003, we played 23 games on our field out here. In 2018, we played 58. That's down from 71 4 years ago. 71 games in 60 days is 58 in 60 days is just about as bad, especially when it's 2 different sports on the same field, because it really isn't fair for football to play on a field after soccer has done what it does to a field, and it's not fair for soccer to play on a field after football has done what it does to a field. 2003, we played 10 games on Memorial. 2018, we were able to play 16. 2003, we played 10 games at Oak Grove. 2018, we played 6.
Mr. Graham,
Yes, sir.
do you want to, John, did you want to play more games on Oak Grove this year?
We didn't ask to play more games on Oak Grove this year. The problem with Oak Grove is getting our teams there,
Okay.
and it's the younger teams that
So
play
that
there.
is not a byproduct of us being shut out of Oak Grove?
Correct. No, they've been very accommodating to us.
Okay.
And in fact, they allowed us to use it at the end of the season for our tournament practices, which was very nice. We used it once, but they have not been a
Okay, okay.
stumbling
Just wanted
block
to
at all.
check.
Yep, no worries for that at all, although it is a great facility that we could utilize more. In 2003, to give you an idea of how Oak Grove was used, in 2003, Oak Grove was used by the girls' soccer team, and the boys played here. When I came in as athletic director, apparently it was this unbelievable thing that I turned the scoreboard on for soccer. So when the girls heard that the scoreboard was turned on for soccer, they said, well, we'd like to play up here too, which is great. I'd love all the games to be here. So the girls moved off of Oak Grove and came here. At the time, we didn't have the ability to shuttle, nor the number of teams needed to be shuttled over to Oak Grove, just to give you the history. What has changed about Memorial, and I get it, and I understand that recreation needs to raise money and whatnot, but we've run a carnival on Memorial for 3 years, and it's destroyed it, for all intents and purposes. We have to go through it with the landscaping company and literally spray paint the holes orange so they can come in and fill in the holes from the stakes that they put in to hold up their tents and the big things they put down to stabilize the rides that they do. It isn't like you're doing that in a Stop and Shop parking lot. We're doing that on a field that we use for sports, and it's a safety issue. This year we didn't have the carnival, so we had that advantage, but the sprinkler system wasn't up and running for obvious reasons, but then we got it up and running. Fortunately, we had a pretty wet summer, so the grass came back pretty good for us. But there again, so we play 16 games on that field, but we also practice 121 practices on Memorial. I mean, that number is just really unfathomable for a number of practices on a grass field, 121. We can put some teams behind Clyde Brown, but we can't play games behind Clyde Brown anymore, because we built a parking lot there. We can play games at Oak Grove. Again, the stumbling block is if we have games at Oak Grove, but we have away games for other teams, getting a bus to get them over to Oak Grove is a challenge at times for us. So that's what
But can I
makes-
stop you there? Because
Yeah.
that may be something we may have to look at, right?
Mhm.
Because, so we're going into this process saying, we can't ignore the past, but we have to think maybe a little more outside the box. And I know it's inconvenient, but maybe to save that field, maybe we're gonna have to identify a bus just for Oak Grove, right? On the
A
days
shuttle
that
bus
you need
back.
a shuttle bus, right?
Right.
And so, I don't wanna discount anything, I don't wanna make it inconvenient for you, but you've come here many times and saying that field's only gonna last for so long. And it looked good this year, but it's not gonna last forever.
good compared to,
Right.
the thing is, we are at a point now, what we have done as a school system, what we have done with our success, if we have parlayed that into an incredible popular sports, the registrations for youth sports is through the roof. And we really don't have a recreation complex in our town to accommodate any aspect of sports. We do the best we can with what we have out here, and everybody uses it. We are now practicing on this field. So along with 58 games, we probably had about 14 practices on that field as well. Once you start practicing on it, it really, it becomes a real dire situation.
And if I may, the other thing I will tell you about a turf field is that when it gets in that condition, there's only one way to recover it, and that is basically to put it fallow for 2 years.
Yep, shut it down.
And
It's
it's
the only
not
way
an
to do
option
it.
for us
Right.
right now, unfortunately.
Right. I've tried to schedule more away games, which aggravates parents, and I don't blame them. You know, why are we away again? Because I can't put you on the field. Our football games, I try to schedule all our sub-varsity football games away. We had 2 middle school games and 2 JV, as opposed to years past where we've had 4 or 5, because they've got the turf fields that we can put them on. If people heard nothing but just this line, we either need to put artificial on that one surface, or we need to build multiple fields. We either need to enhance that surface so that we can use it without any worry of damaging it, or we need to build more fields where we can rest one and rotate them through. We don't need 14 like Hopkinton, but it would be nice to have 5, where we could shut one down a year, rotate it through. When you play the lower levels on certain fields, they don't do the damage the varsity cleats do on a field, so you can rotate them in different ways like that. But if we can't, and I get that, we have got to enhance the surface of the one field we have, so that we can not only play games on it, but we can practice on it as well.
We found 60 grand from the town to do something with the baseball field,
Right.
so it's not
Which is
unheard of to
gorgeous.
try to find money, and that we just have to come up with, the problem is space.
The nice thing about a turf field is it's gonna generate revenue to replace itself, to service itself. You'll generate money that'll pay for the payments towards its construction, and you'll also generate money to put into a fund that'll pay for its resurfacing every 11 to 12 years. So it's, of all the things, it is the only one that'll generate revenue.
And
A lot.
artificial turf.
You know, a good amount, anywhere from $70,000 to $85,000 in a
Yeah,
season.
You've said that
So-
number.
Are
Yes.
the fields the school or the town?
That field is
That's
us.
school, right? But those-
That's the only field we now own.
The athletic fields is on the capital plan for the town,
Mhm.
Now, that's all town.
because that's town. But if we were to do something for that's our field. so we
Correct.
need to- okay.
Yep.
But the cost of doing, we'd have to do something with the
Is
town.
behind Clyde Run going to be school after? It's going to be town.
Right.
We parceled it out, it still didn't become, a little part of it, I think, we took a little
So
land.
this isn't just a school issue, this is a town issue.
Correct. Youth sports, right? We don't have a recreation complex, you know, and that's the, you know, every town, you know, so I live in Norfolk, and we have 2. And you go to that every weekend, and you see everybody and everyone, and you have soccer over here, and you've got baseball going on over here, and it's just a beautiful complex. And you go to the other one on the other side, and that houses Pop Warner football and practices over there, and it's grass as far as the eyes can see, and you're rotating it so none of the fields are getting tired. And then they shut them down. They'll say, we're going 3 weeks, nothing whatsoever on the fields. We're going to put everything behind the middle school, which is like the emergency practice area, and then you go behind that, and that's gorgeous grass, but they don't ever use it because they save it to shut down the recreation complex when they run their fertilizer programs and repair the divots and things like that. So that's just, I think that, I know that kids in this town deserve it, the town itself deserves it. It becomes the center point of your community on weekends. This building is the focal point of our town right now in terms of meetings and whatnot, but your recreation complex really becomes the figure of your town.
Have we looked into turf? Or
We
what
have.
it would take?
There's a plan.
There's a
It's
plan.
gorgeous.
We have a plan.
It's exciting. It's there. It's ready. And I can give you all, we're the only team in the league right now that won't have it. Norton's getting their turf field now. We'll be the only team in a team of 12 that does not have a turf field. Hopkinton's getting theirs. There's Westwood's got 3, Medway's got 3, Ashland's got 2. I mean, you go on and on. There's teams getting multiples. There's Field's already replacing theirs for the second time. What we would give just to have their leftovers, but.
So that's not on our capital.
No, it is somewhere.
It is.
It is
wasn't in
buried.
It wasn't in our ones and
No, we haven't.
twos.
It's on there, it's deep in there.
It's deep in there.
Yep.
Yes, yes.
Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead, Chuck.
So moving on in terms of field usage, it's just, I know you're all aware of it. This is just something we're all working together to get done. And just to give you an idea of the revolving fund, to give you the history of the revolving fund, you can see how athletics has generated more and more receipts of monies over from 2003 to 2018. You can see how our user fees increased over the years. We're talking a low of $14,400 when we first implemented the user fee, up to a high now of anywhere from $102,000, $108,000 to $112,000 with 500 you say 574 participants, but between family caps and waivers, that'll come down closer to about 520, which puts us at around $108,000, $110,000 coming in, as opposed to 15 years ago when we were bringing in 14,400. So the user fee is generating a lot of monies, and it's going towards keeping the programs up and running. We're doing a lot of things with it to keep it going. We're well-dressed still, at least at our varsity levels. We're well-dressed in uniforms.
Now, the one thing you do have to note on the fees, and I actually haven't compared fees to the districts around us, but you'll note that your fee in 2009, 2010 was $220. Your fee in 2018 and 2019 is $220. Okay, obviously things go up in price in that period of time. So while you have had an increase based on participation, you have not had an increase as a fee relative to inflation.
We've done some things that have put a strain on the fee as well and challenged us in terms of staffing and paying stipends to coaches and things like that, which is, but somehow we are able to make it work. We run a very effective program that encompasses not just middle school kids, but also right up through high school, of course. With the only sport I can think of, the two that we don't have that would be common in other schools, is wrestling and field hockey. We have co-op opportunity with lacrosse. We're looking to start swimming over the winter right now, which looks like it's gonna go. We've got girls and boys ice hockey. We've got gymnastics. We've got skiing. We don't have boating. Natick has boating. We don't have boating.
We're not a voting town.
But really, we have to think. You look at the school and you say, well, how do you guys do skiing? Well, it's a self-funded program. They bus over to Ski Ward in Westboro, and they love it. And they do a fantastic job. They do the championships out at Wachusett. And to see those kids, it's a great group of 9 kids, sometimes 11. Like hockey, it's kind of a cultish thing in terms of the hours that they put in, what time they have to get to their facilities. They ride the shuttle bus together on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And swimming's going to be the next interesting sport, to see that group of kids that does swimming. A very interesting group of, right now, young ladies, but it'll be open to both. Hockey has been a very successful endeavor with Hopedale and Milford, and with Medway and Holliston and Ashland. Gymnastics with Medway and Holliston. The opportunities that we've created for our kids is just fantastic. We can't host wrestling. We don't have a wrestling room. There's a whole bunch of dynamics that would play into that. Field hockey, we just don't have, pure and simply, we just don't have the field. There's no way we could play field hockey, soccer, and football on the same field. It just wouldn't work. So, and we really don't have the numbers to sustain a field hockey program right now. So that's the different areas of growth. That's the problems that growth brings upon us. And, through it all, we still are able to win with fantastic kids, fantastic student athletes, great leadership. And you can see that we've done it a lot. And we're very lucky to do that. So there's not a situation where I sit before you saying, well, we need to build that in order to be good. No, we needed to work harder, and we are good. And we still need new facilities, but we'll make the best of what we have until we can make that a reality.
So thank you for that overview.
You're welcome.
And I thank you for this memo that you and Terry spent a lot of time, and probably the superintendent reviewed as well. But so there's some some of the highlights of the memo that I think we need to get into. So they weren't trick questions, but I could see the answer. So what, the first question is, what is the total operating cost of athletics? And then what should it be? What's missing from these numbers, and the number, we have the numbers, we just need to put it together, is that the total operating cost is operating plus revolving plus gifts. So we need to pull all those together.
And they are. You have operating and you have revolving. Actually, I don't know that you have gifts,
We don't. On the front, I'm looking at the front page.
right?
So,
But you have operating and revolving.
sure, but it would be nice to have true numbers.
You have the gifts as an attachment,
Right,
Yeah,
so,
That's attachment C.
right.
yeah,
So it would be nice to put them all together.
okay.
So we have, and going forward, we're tracking what we're coming, are we confident that we know all of the gift dollars coming in? Because we haven't seen a lot of because there's probably not, that have been $1,000. Are we, do we have all of them tracked and documented so we know, so we could do a 3-year look back or 5-year look back and say, this is what we spent?
I
Or
think
what we-
certainly with the cooperation of our boosters clubs, we can do that, and I think they would cooperate with us. I think one of the things that's tricky with gifts, and obviously we can track what we have received. So the answer, I guess there's a couple of ways to answer yes to that question. We certainly can track what we've received, and in fact, in your appendix, we have tracked what we've received. In the sense of related to what the boosters clubs are raising on behalf of the teams, that they are technically an independent organization. So we do have to obviously look for their cooperation in that regard. I think for the most part, and Chuck can speak to it better than I can, being new here, but my experience certainly in other districts has been the boosters clubs are generally pretty willing to cooperate when, we ask for that kind of information, because they understand the goal is overall to try and lift the boat of athletics, whether
So
it's
can
a
I stop you
specific
right
team or
there?
overall.
So the Boosters Club says, we're gonna buy uniforms for this team.
Right.
Or we're gonna buy this. We're accepting that, so there should be no question on what that cost is. This is
But-
not about cooperation from boosters. If we're accepting money,
Once they gift it to us, correct.
Right.
But before they gift it to it, they may have raised other funds.
I'm not looking for the fundings of boosters. I'm looking for what is the tangible cost of items that they provide
And the
to us.
tangible gifts that we have received, we can track,
Okay,
and are tracking.
okay.
And again, I think that in our appendix, we've provided you that.
I can tell you that the Boosters does not buy uniforms. The Boosters will not buy apparel. The Boosters does things, the one particular one we have now, the leadership we have there now will help to do things to enhance banquets, will help to do things like buy benches that impact more than just one sport. So we have benches for football and soccer, and then they get transferred over to baseball. The Boosters has helped with the fertilization program, if you can believe it, with the fields. The Boosters has helped with the purchase of the ice machine. So not necessarily your day, the Boosters has never paid for, well, they've helped with fan buses, but they don't pay for the baseball team to go to Hopkinton. They don't pay any operating costs or anything like that. They're over and above our operating and revolving cost accounts, the monies that they, and we really don't, I haven't asked the Boosters, other than the fan bus they got for us the other day, I've kind of let them keep building up the account that they're working on.
That's fine. This is not about the boosters. This
Mm-hmm.
is about, once we, putting it all together so we know what the cost is. So the next time you come back through here to update us,
Mm-hmm.
you can say, so in FY18, it's 408,000 between the operating and the revolving. And so whatever the extra money, is it $30,000 or $40,000? You're gonna come up to us and say, it cost us $440,000 to run the program. Right now, this is the breakdown of the percentage, because then it's up to us to try to make, and possibly very difficult decisions about, maybe we shouldn't be relying on $30,000 in gifts. Maybe we should be trying to find places within the budget or cost savings or end-of-the-year funding, and we can do that. So that's why we need or want that number. I know it's here, but let's put it together so
We can
so
certainly
we
do
can
that.
have a number, just like we're going to do with the total budget for the district.
We can absolutely do that.
One of the things that would be a bit deceiving about the number that we have right now is if we were to just take that 51,000 that we've raised over the last 3 years and add that in, about 30,000 of that are expenses that are spent every 15 to 20 years, like the new backboards.
Sure.
Those are 37 years old. and we just bought new ones and that were donated. So that's monies that you really wouldn't put into an every year budget
Those are
moving forward.
for the lack of a better, a one-time cost.
Correct. Right.
Because
Yep.
it's, the cycle is very
Exactly,
long.
yeah.
But what we want to quantify is how many of those one-times should we be doing
And at what
every year?
schedule?
Like all the uniform ones, absolutely.
Right, and even like, okay, so it's back, you know, we do backboards every, whatever, 15, 20,
Right.
whatever the life.
Yep.
We do the scoreboards every 10, 50. You know, there's probably, yeah, probably longer, but
Right.
there's probably, for that same 20, 25,000, there's probably something, or one or two things that we could say, yeah, like, it's $25,000 a year.
Right.
And we're putting it to whatever is needed this year.
Mhm.
And that's gonna change, so it's not necessarily something even on a set schedule, but it's, we need 25,000 for facility or equipment
Right.
upgrades.
If I may, what I think I would do is try to delineate those gift numbers into two categories. One category would be inclusive into what we're talking about as the operating budget. Another piece of that, like the backboards, would be a great example. I would probably have a column sort of at the end to the side, and I would say, these are capital expenditures that have been funded through gifts. Because our capital improvement plan, as we've talked about in the past, doesn't necessarily always mean that a capital improvement item is funded by the town. It may be funded any number of different ways. One of them may be, in this case was, apparently in the past, a gift.
So you're saying you would put the gifts in the operating budget?
No,
I
in
don't-
other words, you have two different things. You have two different things. For example, if the backboards, let's say the backboards, and I'm just throwing out a number to be, brash. Let's say the backboards were $10,000. We all agree that $10,000 is a capital expense.
Sure.
Okay? So to put that in that current chart as another column of gifts as an operating expense would be inappropriate. Okay, it would misrepresent the operating expense for any given year.
All right.
So we would put that as a column sort of on the end as
So I
entitled
see, so
capital
when you say
expenditures.
operating, you're talking about operating costs opposed to the.
So I'm talking about
Fund
annual
10.
operating costs.
So you'd have operating costs, and you would have Fund 10,
Right.
then revolving,
Then
and then gifts.
gifts.
And you could do that
And
for
exactly.
capital as well.
And then on the end of it, we'd say,
Okay.
oh, by the way, there's these other things we do have to do, like replace backboards.
I get
And
you.
in a given year.
That makes sense.
This was something that was paid for by gifts.
So we didn't go through this process with athletics in our capital plan, then, so we don't have any of the equipment replacement in
Right.
the school capital plan, so we need to.
Nope,
revise that.
it's part of, in that overall, when we think about planning, we've only touched the surface of where that capital plan needs to go, because it has components within it, and we've talked about the technology long-term planning, athletic long-term planning is gonna be another piece of it.
So, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No.
So before we move off on the total operating costs, and I did send this to you very
Yes.
late yesterday, so I apologize for that.
No problem.
That format that we've used for all of our kind of hybrid, not hybrid, it's not the right term, mixed funding cost centers, maybe when we update, we can add the gifts and the donations, and then we can get more of a breakdown of what the operating fund and what the revolving fund are paying for. So I did send that to you late. I had no
Yep.
expectations, hoped,
Nope.
but it's fine. So maybe as
No worries. We
whatever
can-
questions we have, we can use that
Yep.
formatting. Okay.
To give you a heads up, the next big thing, other than the fields, we're in good shape for scoreboards in the gym, we're in good shape for a scorer's table, we're in good shape for a shot clock, all basically within the last 4 or 5 years new. Brand-new PA system, off the charts, fantastic, wonderful, great. The next thing is the scoreboard. Scoreboard's been struck by lightning twice, it's about 38 years old, they don't even make the parts for it anymore. He was able to take from an old one to get the score, the time and the score to come back up for us for the remainder of this season, but we have none of the below functions because they don't make the
What's the
driver
cost?
for it. 15,000, I believe, is the bid we just got with John from School Board
Oh.
Enterprises in Mansfield.
Good, because I put 16 into the capital improvement plan.
Beautiful.
We will update our plan for 15,000. That's not an unreachable number.
No, and I think actually, Carrie would maybe be able to help me out. I think I put 16 into our capital plan.
Did we put it in there?
We did,
Good, okay.
yeah,
That's great.
pretty sure.
Otherwise, we're in, in terms of equipment needed to run a sports program, we're in pretty good shape.
Other than a field.
What about PA outside?
perfect, brand new, just installed, it's
Yep.
unbelievable. Yep, all set for another 20, 25 years. It is beautiful. So we're good there. We got some renovations going. One of the seniors is gonna do a senior project to help renovate the press box to some degree, because that does need some repair. But in terms of like electronic equipment and things, school boards, we're in good shape right now. Very fortunate. The school boards and the gym were donated. We're in good shape.
Lights outside.
Yeah, that's coming. That would be with the field project, but yeah, you're right. The poles have warped so badly that they're twisted, and we've already bent the heads as far as they can go. So between the pole twisting to the left and the heads being twisted to the right, we're now finally getting a dark spot in front of the visitors bench to the right. Those have been up since 1972, 74, so we've replaced some of the heads, the lamps.
The lights actually were a number one priority in that study that you had done a few years back. But I agree with Chuck. I think that really the lighting and if you're gonna do a turf field, they really do kind of go hand in hand.
What's the turf field? You said 1.5 million last time.
Well, if we go track, if we do the plan we had, which included moving the football field back and over to the left, which would take the first row of parking out of the parking lot over by Superintendent Gustafson's office, the baseball field would also come back and go over. That's what would take up those parking spots. You're talking about 2.9. Holbrook and Carver just did them with an 8-lane track. $2.9 million is what, when we originally did it, was 2.4, and now it's at 2.9.
What was 1.5? Just the
turf.
the football field?
Exactly, yeah, no
Yeah.
track and
And
no
then-
moving of the baseball field.
Right, they're not getting cheaper.
And no lights either with that?
Correct, that would not include lights, yeah.
Yeah, we have a separate price on the lights, and I can't,
I want to say 70,000, but that's what I'm hearing from the other. We have 8 poles now, they'll go down to 4 poles.
yeah.
You'll go more lamps on one pole, so we have 8 on one pole. You'll go to 16, maybe as many as 24. I'm trying to picture Holbrook and Cohasset and Carver. The facilities comparable to our school size that have done comparable. The seating was perfect. I don't know if any of you went to the Holbrook game. That's the facility that we would get here in terms of
Yeah.
seating, press box, turf, just perfect for what our school needs would be. It's not this gigantic ostentatious facility at all, but the surface itself is first rate and first class, and the seating would be commensurate with what we expect for our crowds, so it would be perfect.
So just, I'm not necessarily going in order, but there's a couple other, I had a couple other thoughts on some of these questions, is
Yep.
that, should team fundraisers be handled by an outside organization? Unequivocally, no. I think there was that question wasn't worded, the intent was not that to hire some private corporation to raise money.
Okay.
How should money come into us? We had a coach that was asking for checks for fundraising to be made out to him directly.
Right.
I'm not sure if there's other coaches that have done that or not. So it wasn't to hire a cold caller to
Okay.
call your house to raise money
Yep.
for Millis Athletics. It was, how do we handle the receipt of money? It shouldn't be going to individuals.
Well, and I think the broader question there, which relates to another question, is, do you have a policy? Do you have procedures? Frankly, you don't have a policy. And related to that, we have some pretty good practices, not all of them necessarily are probably 100% according to Hoyle. And I think that's one of the things both Chuck and I need to work on, is we need to develop written procedures. Okay, and we acknowledge that. And I think at some point in time, we need to come to you and say, and work with the policy committee in developing a policy and saying, this is our fundraising policy. Okay, not necessarily just for athletics, just in general, this is the school committee's fundraising policy. Virtually every committee in the state should have one. I don't know that they all do have one. But, when you raised that question, it was very interesting, because I went to your policy book, I looked, and
So
Nope,
my
didn't
next
have one.
point was going to be to update that we weren't looking for a boiler room somewhere, a boiler room company
right,
to do fundraising. It was going to be, why don't you guys start on the procedures, and if you can show us a
Right.
model policy? Because
Yeah.
the policy will reference procedures that will not be
Correct.
in the policy, but it'll just be
Correct.
an attachment, right?
Correct.
So if you can give us some standard or model policies from your
We-
world, we can
we can absolutely.
look
we
at that and modify for us.
We can both look at other districts, and certainly I've done some. I know Chuck has probably seen some through the association, and we can come up with stuff for you.
Because there is a protection that a policy provides too, right? That
Correct.
an individual coach, I'm not assigning malfeasance or malicious intent at all, but allegations could be made.
Absolutely.
There's a protection for the district, there's a
Yep.
protection for individuals that we need to become more organized and formalized.
The most dangerous thing any organization does is fundraise. Absolute, number one, most dangerous thing they do is fundraise. So unless you have solid procedures, you're absolutely right. It can be totally innocent, but nonetheless, it can be extremely harmful, both to the organization and to some individual who was very well-meaning, but, did something that seemed very innocent and seemed very right, and all of a sudden it just goes sideways.
And I can speak to why that happened, because,
We don't, I mean,
because just in terms of, like, we had a process set up where Boosters was taking the money from the teams and putting it in a line item. And then the person felt that it was becoming too cumbersome and they couldn't do that any longer, so we tried to switch it back over into the gift account. The problem with putting into the gift account is you can't get a check. If you want to go out and buy motivational T-shirts or something, you can't just go to the office and get a check. It literally takes 6 weeks, if we're lucky, if it's 6 weeks, to go utilize that money. So took the money back out. Fortunately, the new leadership that came in to the boosters now says, I'll take care of it, no problem whatsoever. Put the monies back into the boosters. So now we have a nice, easy paper trail again that we once had established that was removed, now is back in place for the monies going through the Boosters Club, on top of what the Boosters Club is also doing for their fundraising. So for instance, the race, the costume race, that was the boosters running it for the boosters. I think they did a comedy night or something recently. That was the trivia night, boosters for the boosters. Nothing, no sports teams, or obviously parents went, but that money would go into the boosters. Soccer runs a car wash, that money's going to the boosters, but under the line item, soccer team.
Sure.
So now there's a paper trail in it. It
Right.
goes, just so you know that kind of the history of
I
where
get
we're
that,
at.
I understand that.
And we do, Mr. Chair, we do have a procedure for any fundraising that occurs, for example, many senior projects
Right.
do fundraising, or the 5th grade, lots of small fundraising projects happen in the schools to benefit generally charities. And so we have a form with our guidelines attached. The advisor for the activity fills it out. The principal has to sign off on it, and then it comes to me for sign off.
And-
Even for little bake sales, they'll
I'm-
say the profit is going to be $25, but they still now fill out a form so that we're trying to have them be aware that it's not just whatever they want to do. They need an approval process ahead of time.
And I'm copied on all of those forms.
This is not a reflection, the issues around fundraising is not a reflection on the good work that's being done to support. I've had the baseball, we've had this conversation the day after school ends, soccer outside of Isabella's. I've had the baseball players come up and knock on my door to sell those coupon books that I never use the coupons, they're $20. I have them all over the house, right? And so
Good cause.
it's not, so this is not a reflection
I understand.
on the fundraising that's being done, but it is a reflection on, we may be relying too much on fundraising, right? And we may be, in my opinion, and we can get into what it's funding, fundraising by team should be for the extra above and beyond. The Super Bowl rings, or the championship goats, or whatever,
Yep.
the special warm-ups, like that's above and beyond. But
Correct.
when we start to fund, and I know you have the breakdown, things that should be either funded by the school or through the operating budget, that becomes problematic, right?
Exactly.
And so this is the first deep dive that we've done. A lot of this is, I've seen this from you before, but this is more about how do we approach budgeting next year? And
Gotcha.
that's why we really need to drill down on what's the bottom line number in the buckets, so what we can make decisions strategically, so maybe we're relying less on fundraising.
Well, and you mentioned the B word, and for example, when Chuck and I were going through this, I mentioned to Chuck, and it's one of the things you'll see as we put forward a budget to you, I said, in virtually every other district I've ever been in, there is an athletic transportation line. And the reason there's an athletic transportation line is so that you can delineate the cost of athletic transportation from your regular transportation, your special ed transportation. Same, I know we're not talking about it tonight, but co-curricular. You have a co-curricular transportation line. And the reason you do that, it's not necessarily new money. It may simply be shifting around money. It's already in your budget. But the idea is to charge those expenses so that you can see actual expenses from year to year and understand what a true cost is.
If you look at the total operating cost, that the document I sent, we have transportation in there.
Right.
We broke out transportation, so it
But,
is.
but in looking at how it was done, because I did get a little chance to look at it and go back and look at some of the source data, it was done more on an estimating basis and not on a reality basis. And what we need to do is do it, kind of more reality. And
We look forward to the updated, real,
Yeah,
reviewed sheet.
Yeah.
And so,
Well, then also, just looking at in that first table, it shows, our operating funds went up from 17 to 18, the operating funds for athletics was an increase of less than 1%. And then from 18 to the current budget, we actually reduced it by $5,000. So, again, this just goes to the entire, one aspect of what we're trying to get to with the whole budget process of all the programs is, you're right, costs go up. We, in my opinion, as a committee, we need to continue the discussion of, as costs go up, if the operating budget supports a program that's fee-based to some percentage, we need to be having the discussions that percentage should stay consistent going forward.
Right.
And if we're not increasing the operating lines that cover these programs by the same 3-4% that our total budget is increasing, then we're inherently, whether we look at it or not, we should be, we are shifting the burden of athletics to nowhere, or we're either cutting it or we're shifting it to a position where you're forcing fee rate discussions and things like that, and it's not.
I want to speak to that a little bit. I'm glad you brought it up, Mark. Keep in mind, when you're looking at those numbers on the operating side, you're comparing an actual from FY18 to a budget for this year. And when you made those budgetary changes in athletics, you actually increased the budget, but you increased it before you knew what your end-of-year actual was going to be. So I agree with you. I think you've got to figure out how to keep pace and do maybe better. I've got to do better projecting for you as to where you need to be. But so in reality, I think, I hate to say it this way, but before the year is out, I suspect that 280,000 is going to be more like 285 or more when we get to year-end actuals.
so, but that may only be a 1%, right? So that's still not the direction we need to be in.
Right.
And it also will it'll end that way because we will have waited until June and said, okay, we ended up having enough money in hiring savings.
Correct.
Or heat savings, and we can throw $10,000 to partially fund some equipment, or we buy football helmets, or whatever's on the list that we're sitting there, and we come in and that, so it's not because we've said we're increasing the athletic budget, it's that we sit here in May
Right.
and June 15th and say, what can we buy by June 30th?
Right.
And we tick off a few things.
Right. We're being reactive as opposed to proactive.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir, go
we
ahead.
actually, a 2% increase across the board was our proposed preliminary budget for expenses, but of course, when we had to cut $425,000 out of our budget, we eliminated the 2% increase. However, we did transfer, and this will be in your updated budget book pages when we have a chance to update those. We did transfer $16,000 more to athletics because we knew it was underfunded, and that came from savings, and it was, I remember discussing this with the committee. It came from savings in tuition. I believe it was virtual high school tuitions that because we get free online courses through our tech consortium, we didn't need as much in the line item for online courses, so we were able to shift that over to athletics. But it is, so when you get your updated budget pages, you will note that the 16,000 additional for athletic expenses in this year's budget.
But it's also, it's not just, it's the concept that we need to look
Right.
at. Because
Right.
it's the same. This is how every department in town functions, and how it's functioned for 15+ years. If it's not a salary line, it's real easy to just budget flat and figure it out later. And and the reality is, as we're finding, that's why maintenance of buildings, other kind of capital expenses get delayed, because over time, those non-salary lines have been, it's a much easier discussion to say, we'll just budget that flat and figure it out. And I think we need to, part of what we're trying to do and what we've discussed over the summer, we need to have probably a little bit more harder discussion about just doing that.
Proactively plan it out.
Right.
Right, and also for uniforms. I mean, we may have to make a decision at the end of the year. We normally, our biggest spend at the end of the year is prepaid spend, right? And that makes sense, and it's tactical, and it's the right thing to do. We've never lost that money, but maybe we're not spending as much on that next year, and we're funding some uniforms, because some of these uniform cycles, we're stretching them out too long. You know uniforms better than me, but just looking at the numbers of years,
Right.
we're looking potentially 5 to 7 years on some. That's too much.
Yep.
We did, our students and our kids deserve better in that, and it's not a question of you wanting to do it, but that's the reason why we're having this conversation, because we need to know when something comes up, that's the bucket, not as an afterthought on June 29th, but
Yep.
planning ahead and looking at when we do our budget.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
Can we talk a little bit about uniforms, or can I ask?
Sure.
her to
Sure.
Have a little discussion. So uniforms, and I got your replacement schedule, and I know some teams we have to stretch.
Mhm.
And I know you generally replace varsity and then trickle it down.
Correct.
Have we looked at sub-varsity uniforms or purchasing? So my concern or my question, or how do we get it so our freshman teams are playing in uniforms that are like 8 to 10 years old?
Mhm. I can answer. So what we did a couple of years ago was the committee made a special funding appropriation, and we bought the sub-varsity freshman middle school teams all new jerseys, and all the kids wore black shorts. So they were in new jerseys. Correct.
Just the soccer.
And then volleyball, I think, got on the coattails of that, and they were able to get some of the same gray shirts, but correct, that was for soccer. When a team goes and fundraises and buys their own uniform, so say, for instance, girls' basketball, and they were slated to get a $3,300 set of new uniform, but they decided to do it themselves, now that money can start to trickle down, and we can put some teams in. We don't have to get the same high quality that we put the upper teams, the varsities in, but certainly the goal would be that when someone pays a user fee, they should get a uniform within 2 or 3 years old, regardless of the level that they're on, ideally. But the reality is that we've had to make cuts in certain ways because of certain things, and part of that came out of uniform replacement. And as Mark said, we shifted the burden of the monies to fundraising. Because there really weren't any other line items we could go to. So if basketball wasn't going to wear a 6-year-old uniform, then they would say, can we fundraise? We don't mind, but we can't wear these uniforms. We don't want to wear these uniforms for another year.
Right, because it looks, so is there a reason why we didn't fund any uniform replacements this year?
For
any teams, so I mean,
the boys soccer is in new uniforms, and the
Okay.
girls soccer team didn't want new uniforms. They felt that theirs were fine.
Okay.
So that's the answer to those two sports. Volleyball got new jerseys. Theirs are rather inexpensive compared to everybody else's.
Sure.
Cross-country and track, I try to replace gradually, so we're not buying 60 at once, because we have...
That's why we saw a little bit of money.
Exactly,
every year.
because we have cross-country and winter and spring track all wearing the same uniform, so we don't have to buy them all at the same time. I can spread it out and share it through the fees that come in that way. We don't have to buy uniforms for our co-ops because we're not the host school, so that they pay a fee towards the school that they go to.
So-
Go ahead.
Girls basketball is not scheduled for another 5 years.
Correct.
And girls softball softball's not scheduled for the, so they're both scheduled the same year?
They're both in brand-new uniforms. This will be their second year for softball and basketball. When they won, they donate, the girls take one set and someone donates another new set. So girls' basketball has had over the last 3 years a new set donated twice. When they won it twice, they got to keep their jerseys and got new ones to come in and replace them with a private donation. So the girls' basketball.
For their varsity?
For varsity,
jerseys?
correct, yep.
Okay, so those are only, they're about 2 years old?
This will be the girls, I think, third year in those, and this will be the boys' third year on their uniforms,
Okay.
correct.
So that would make,
They'll go one more next year,
it'd be like 8 years before we're replacing.
before we did,
Right.
but they replaced them on their own.
So what is the, what should, as we think about sports, regardless of the funding, how it comes in, when should varsity basketball, what's the time frame on it?
Every 4 years for every, is
4
what I
years.
try to go, every 4 years.
Okay.
And it works out well, because we have 16 sports. So every 4 years is 4 sports a season, so you're in new uniforms. The uniforms that we buy for varsity are high-grade uniforms, they last. If you wash them correctly, they'll last a long time. They're very well stitched. You go down to the bottom level, you can, just when you look at the shorts, between what the varsity wears for shorts and what the freshmen wear for shorts, it's a completely different quality of material and everything else. But you're paying a lot less for the other ones
So
as
can
well.
we look into what a replacement schedule would be or cost for, and I'm not, it doesn't necessarily need to be all 3 teams if we have a freshman, JV, and varsity, but how do we get the younger kids or the freshman teams?
Mhm.
And I know some of it has, but how do we get them into uniforms that are a little, like, how do we get them on a replacement schedule? And how do we start funding some uniforms?
Well, in the budget replacement that I gave you guys, the plan, the every 4 years, I padded that for roughly 1,200 and 1,200 for the JV and the freshmen to get uniforms. The varsity would be 3,000, so I believe you see it's like 7,000. So you go 3 and 3 for your varsities, basically, give or take, and then you're left with about 1,200, 1,100 to try and get JV and freshman jerseys. But then the question is asked, do we want to get jerseys and shorts? Do we want to get jerseys, shorts, and socks? You say, oh, how expensive can socks be? Well, when you buy 120 pairs, socks will be $800. So,
Buy socks
you buy socks, you have to for rule. Anything that's by rule,
for certain sports?
right, you have, we make sure that we are dressed to rule.
Okay.
So,
And then, so the other question I had was on the warm-up gear.
Yes.
So it said that we provide warm-up gear that
we do
they-
not.
that the
That was
kids
if
can
the
go-
request was made, what would it cost if we were to provide?
Got it.
So I put that in there for you so you could see what warm-up costs would be.
Okay. So
We
that
do
was
not
in
provide-
That's on
the
attachment A.
budget.
Correct,
Okay.
And that's per student,
correct,
per participant.
right.
So $65 for warm-ups for
Sweatshirt and.
one
and-
student?
Correct.
That's a
yeah.
lot.
Yep,
Well, actually,
Yeah, I
don't
know.
even know if that would, that seems like a sweatshirt.
right.
Might be-
You can get
Yeah. I
hoodies now
know.
for
Yeah, I know.
55, that's right.
Expensive nowadays.
So-
Like jacket and pants,
Right.
65.
Realistically,
Yeah.
you're talking 120 if you go Nike, beautiful, all that kind of stuff. But if
Yeah.
you go 65 is gonna get you a
So
80.
typically, right now, the way it works is it's an option for students to purchase, when I say students,
Yeah.
I really mean parents, right?
They
And-
fundraise for it and
yeah,
they
so
order 'em, yeah.
Or they fundraise for it, so it's just, if you'd like to buy a team sweatshirt, here's the website, you can do it.
Correct.
Or if some teams are lucky enough to have fundraising money, they may purchase.
You just
Yeah.
exactly described the two ways. We could bring on a service where you go online and order it through the company that would print custom for us, deliver it right to your house through the mail. Or you can fundraise and go out and order from Tri-Valley, wherever you'd like to order from, and do it custom for your own team.
Okay.
So based on this attachment A, we're saying really a full replacement schedule would be about 7,000
For uniforms,
For you.
correct.
For varsity only.
It's a little padded to have about a $1,200 leftover, but correct. That's primarily for varsity, yes. Because then theory is that you would pass down
And
as
if you were
best you
doing
can.
that if you were truly doing that every 3 to 4 years, then I guess the tough part is, you end up having at some point, your third team, whether it's freshman, middle, whatever it is, probably an 8 or 9-year-old.
Correct. Which is why we made that appointment to appropriation for the money,
So-
correct.
So if we wanted to try and avoid that, then we would need to if it would have to be a little, now this has a little bit of padding in it. but
Right.
We might need to.
A little
might
more
need to be
padding.
A little bit higher.
But
Yeah.
I would,
Like 8,000.
I would make the analogy to our sped vans, right? We try to do one a year.
Yep.
And every few years, we find some money And people push for that extra van, and it helps us with the cycle. And I think we should be looking at, because for small money, we can get kids, they're not 8 years old, maybe they're 5 years old. And so I think we should look at this, we should approach the uniform piece the same way we do with the sped van. We can't guarantee it's gonna happen every year, but maybe that, and maybe it's every 3 years, maybe every 4 years, we have to put in.
Or even if it's, and going off of that, but maybe it's even that every 3 or 4 years, the sub-varsity teams may get new uniforms instead of always getting the 4-year-old hand-me-down.
Right.
Because then they could last longer.
And there's another component in there too, Kerry, that happens, is when you pass down a varsity uniform to our sub-varsity teams, it's not like it's going from a senior to a junior, or even a senior to a sophomore.
Correct.
It's going on a freshman and an 8th grader. So it
Right.
becomes a
Or
dress.
seventh
Right,
grader. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So that's the
Yeah.
downside of, yeah.
Because right.
It just don't fit.
A lot of them that, whether it's soccer or even basketball.
Yep.
Our freshman teams are seventh,
Right.
eighth.
Right.
And they're wearing varsity uniforms.
That are-
Correct. All rolled up and taped and everything else.
So we have, I think we have a better handle on the current state of athletics. We're gonna move towards the preferred state of athletics, and then we should have an ideal state, right? We probably won't get to the ideal state, but we should be moving from the current to the preferred.
Yep.
So I will make another observation. And it was duly noted that you talked about the last time we raised fees, right? There has been, I will speak for some, or at least the committee, there's been a general reluctance to raise fees across any program.
Yep.
Right? There's a lot of money being spent. And so the only fee that we have raised, since I've been on the committee since 2010, was preschool, and that was an adjustment on more of a billing. So a bill went up, but it really wasn't, it wasn't a true raising of a fee.
We were charging, we were
Charging
people
9.5
for
months.
9.5 months instead of 10 months.
Right.
So we adjusted it so that it covered.
So they technically paid more money, but they were paying for the services that they got. So it was equalizing. So I'm not saying that fees are not, a fee raising is not an option. There has been a lot of reluctance. Here's what I will say, though. I'll state the obvious, that raising fees, even minimally, is not going to solve the problem.
I agree with you.
Not even close. I'm not saying we should never have the conversation, but our fix for this is not raising fees, because the people we'd be raising fees on are spending $900 in donations and $3,000 in
Right.
donations and buying those $20 cards.
Right.
So they're paying it either directly or
Right.
indirectly, not a reason not to have the conversation, but our solution to this problem is not raising fees.
Absolutely, but one of the things we all have to remember is we have a fixed pie, okay? In the sense of that we have a 2.5% limitation plus growth. And so if we are looking at how to fund all kinds of things, including athletics, and admittedly, the more we could fund without any kind of fees, I think we all agree would be the best. Okay, but there are limitations on how far we may be able to go and do everything that we want to do. So when I say, you have to kind of look at this, it's my way of saying, we have to put everything on the table. Now, we may take it right off the table,
Right.
but we have to put it on the table as a discussion. One of the things that is interesting in different communities, and I've done these surveys before, and it's interesting sometimes the responses you get, is when you do a survey and ask people, would they rather pay an increased fee or have more fundraising? And I'll be honest with you, you do not get a consistent response, community to community. You will get districts, Georgetown, for example, was a district that was like this. They will jump all over donating money. They would much rather keep the fees low. And you know what? If you went out and asked them for the money, they would cheerfully give it to you. Okay? And you will have other communities where they'll say, double my fees, but just don't do any more fundraising, because I don't want to do fundraising. So, again, that can be all over the spectrum. And-
But part of what you said is we can make hard decisions internally too. So there's a zero-sum pie.
Yep.
But that doesn't mean we have to do, it doesn't mean we should only be doing a 1.97 increase. Maybe next year, we have to make a difficult decision to fund more out of the operating budget.
Absolutely.
And fund less somewhere else. That's a hard conversation, but we're going to have a different set of eyes with different experience looking at our operating budget. And maybe we can find money somewhere or make tactical decisions at the end of the year.
One of the figures we can bring to is actually the budget, this budget compared with last year's budget, because athletics, we did add money, so it is
Right.
greater than a 2% increase.
Yeah.
But in my 10 years as superintendent, this is my 11th year. Half of those years, we've had to reduce from our, what is a level service, level staffed budget proposal. We've had to cut $400,000, $500,000 out of that half the time. So we have said that, it's been the premise that to maintain quality of education, we've retained staff, and I think that shows up in the results we're getting that you saw in the school improvement plans and the MCAS scores, et cetera. So we have prioritized personnel and those who have direct contact with students over some of the expense categories, and expenses have absorbed those costs, those reductions for many of those years. Not all of them. We have had to cut personnel as well. But 50% of the time we're making do with less than a level service, level staff budget. And getting tremendous results, as you saw from Chuck's graphs.
As I said, I've never come to this table ever to ask for more money, ever, or asked if you need to build better things for us because we need better things to win. It's not the case.
And I think, again, it's not, this is the same discussion we'll have regardless of every program and everything. Because you haven't come in, and whether it was Dave Byrne or no one came in asking
Right.
for facility needs and the non-salary pieces, I would argue saying absorbed it. They had to absorb it, but what that really meant was routine maintenance of buildings wasn't done. Routine repairs of whatever wasn't done. Routine replacements of uniforms wasn't done.
Yep.
Unless it was done through a fundraiser. So
Yep.
yes, there was very conscious, very targeted, in my opinion, very appropriate decisions on where reductions were made. But, especially in light of the $50 million building going up next door, a lot of that discussion, and rightfully so, has turned to how do we maintain our infrastructure, and that, again, not just even school-wide, but town-wide. It's a, discussion about roads, so I think we just have to have the discussion of, we may not as easily be able to just stay on the same path of it's all expense line items are the first and only things that get held. We may have to say no. We
Yep.
have to raise this and figure out what we do from there. And
Yep.
it'll be different, difficult discussion. But I don't think that as a district and as a town, we can continue to just level fund and figure it out later on these things.
And just to another observation, transportation, when I first got here, they were going to Framingham to buy stuff at the auction, right? And it was the right thing to do to try to get by, but that cost us probably more money in the long run because the repair bills were going through the roof. And it took a long time to break the kind of cycle of, we'll just get by. And we weren't looking to spend money just to spend money, but when you buy a new van, the maintenance cost on that is substantially lower than buying an 8-year-old neon with 130,000 miles. I hope that is gone. There is literally a neon. It aggravated me, but there's a point where, and maybe it's not the exact equivalent here,
Right.
but sometimes you have to spend a little more money to spend less money in the future. But you have to find where that bucket of money is, and that's our job. That's not your job. Is to come here and not edit, and to give us that, and with the help of Terry, which has been very helpful for everyone, we can come up and our budget process will look different this year. So we know the existing, we know the preferred, and probably won't get to the ideal, but let's at least talk about the ideal, and then we can make the difficult decision.
And we support that, athletics, we support the process. Please know that. When I go into Nancy's office and she'll look across, I go, Nancy, I get it. I understand where priorities have to be. Don't worry, we'll figure this out. And we sit down and we talk. There's no sense coming in feeling sorry for yourself. I get it. Athletics gets the process and understands its role. And when times when we've been able to reallocate back into athletics, you have, which is an incredible luxury when that happens. And at times when we can't, we go an extra year, sadly, with a set of uniforms or whatever the case may be. There is fallout from those decisions. However, it's not complaining and whining. It is what it is, and we move on, but you can see it's not impacting our success.
So you have done a good job with the student athletes. You have done a good job
Great.
growing this program. We had a championship team, a repeat championship team. None of this discussion is about the importance of athletics, the importance of teamwork. It's not about that. This
Nope.
is the
The whole
budget and
process.
policy.
That's right. And I support it 1,000,000%. No worries
Do
whatsoever.
you guys have anything? Are we good?
I just have a question. Hi, I'm Robin. I'm
Hi,
new
Robin.
here. My kids are in elementary school, so I don't know very much about the athletic programs in high school yet. But
You'd be
I was
surprised.
just wondering why you need to bus the home teams to the Oak Grove field.
Great question, because most of them, if we were to try to walk them, half of them would end up at Dunkin' Donuts. There's a safety factor there. Parents won't let their kids walk. It's about 1.5 miles. The games start at 3:30. You're trying to get them out of here, get them over there on time. It can be a logistical nightmare. Some kids are driven, so some kids are there 40 minutes early. The other kid comes jogging in with one shoe on. We tried it. In the old days, it was the older kids going, so they drove themselves. It was easy. But now the older kids practice here, so the younger kids are the ones going over to Oak Grove. Now, it was only 6 times this year that we had to do that, so it wasn't that bad. But 6 times is, wow, this is crazy. Why are we doing this? So that's why.
But
'Cause they're
Chuck,
younger kids.
I was serious, because we're going to do transportation probably sooner than later.
Right.
We need to find probably more buses to help you in field trips. But we may have to have a conversation. If Oak Grove is a potential to save the fields, and we may, we have to cost that out. What is the
Right.
cost of doing that?
Right.
Whether we can get the driver and whether we can get the appropriate bus, but I don't think we should say we can't do it without at least, let's look at that, because transportation is probably next coming in,
Right.
Can you
so.
bus them
coming.
to all their home games?
We do. No. To all their home games, no.
Away
Just
games.
Oak Grove. All the away games, yes.
Everybody else's home games.
But what we've done to save money, to give you an idea of the creativeness that we have done, every team will drive itself to one away game. So that saves you $120 to $150. Combine that over 100 games, with every team doing just one. I'll get calls from people, is soccer going to have to do that again? No, boys won't have to do it again, but girls is going to be next. Volleyball, you're next. Cross country, get ready. Everybody does one. It just gives us that cushion for hopefully an extra purchase of jerseys or something like that. But yes, we bus to all. Some towns just bus to the games, and then they don't give the return trip. That's like the next step we could take, because most of the parents go to the games, so why not let them go home with their parents? So that saves you $60 on a bus trip. So that's another level we could go to if we wanted to. But yes, we bus to all the away, and we do bus the younger kids to Oak Grove. Yep.
Mark, anything else? Kerry? Nance?
No, thank you. Both.
Thank you,
all
guys.
very
You were the
much.
first.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving.
You guys as well. Thanks.
And Terry, you may as well just stay there because you have the revolving fund update.
Okay.
Nice going, buddy.
Pardon me.
No.
Sorry,
Let's
go ahead.
do it.
Appreciate
I like it.
Support. Thank you.
No problem.
I'll let you get your papers.
All right. Now, let's see here.
Thank you.
Take care, Chuck.
Thank you, Chuck.
What is the RDA system, Terry?
That is our accounting system, otherwise known as, well, no, I won't say that. in
Micro
public.
budget, RDA is the
micro-budget.
company.
Micro budget.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was going to say something else, but it's not polite to say in mixed company or on
Mark?
TV.
Mark has heard dirty words before you.
All right. Well, I don't have the memo up, but I have the funds up.
Would you like just a hard copy?
No, I have it. I should have it here somewhere. Jody's good to me. I'm sure she's put it in my.
You're a paper guy too?
Well, I'm
Only the
a
best.
both. I'm a both guy. Okay. I have to get there from here. I do have the funds up, so certainly if folks have questions, happy to address them. I think I would say parenthetically, you see that, choice is fund number 70, and they start at fund number 23. You have a number of funds that aren't listed here that are inactive. Most of them are inconsequential things, like, for example, you had a revolving fund back when there was the ARRA stimulus, for example. Okay, that's obviously long since gone, so those are the types of things that you might see. But just to remind you of a couple of things that I noted, for example, things of the grants, for example, you'll see some negative numbers right now, but that's simply because not all of the reimbursements come in over the course of the year. Ultimately, we're not going to spend more than the grant is for, so those will balance off to zero. Or in some cases, there may even be a slight carryover to next year, but they won't be in deficit. The ones that do concern me are right now, and that can change a little bit, but preschool revolving and kindergarten revolving right now are really not tracking the way they have in the past. Now, this is my first year here, so that may be just maybe a little bit of me not being used to how they track as well. So I may be overly pessimistic at the moment, but my job is to be overly pessimistic. So I am concerned that there may be a situation where later in the year, as we get closer to year end, that I may be coming to you and suggesting that there may be expenditures that to balance the year, we may need to propose to you to suggest moving them to the revolving fund. But those right now are my only two concerns right now, and it's a revenue concern in those two funds.
Do we know?
Oh, and that's right, you had a question, and I.
No, not.
Yeah.
We'll get that, you can answer that. For kindergarten and preschool, we did some projection and analysis
Yep.
over the summer, end of the summer, and also coming into last winter, we did a lot. As you're looking at this, I don't know if Nancy knows, just because we have enrollment numbers too. Do we have the enrollments that we expected?
That's what I haven't had a chance to go back and check my projections. So, sometimes when I'm doing a projection, I'm doing a statistical projection. And so what I need to do is match up those statistical projections against our enrollment right now. Kindergarten, I want to say, Nancy, maybe you can help me out here with this. I wanted to say the kindergarten was not quite what we expected.
I'm sorry.
The
repeat
kindergarten
that.
enrollment.
Kindergarten enrollment?
I was going to say that wasn't quite what we expected it would be.
I'm not sure. So one of the things we have not had time to do is look into these, and and I haven't even been able, had time yet with Terry to sit down and go over the past projections we've done and the work we did on preschool and kindergarten. So we don't know yet, and to be honest, I'm not sure. I'd have to check on enrollment and what we had projected it would
Right.
be.
So the short answer to your question is, it's on my watch list, and one of the things we'd want to do is take, again, that early concern and then match it up against the projections that were done in the past, the enrollments that we have, and again, those things can change. So that's, I'd rather raise the concern now than have it become a surprise in, May.
So as we think about looking at the next cost center,
Yes.
to make it probably a little bit easier, I think transportation we have a better handle on. Maybe we should do transportation next, and you can start thinking about early education. because those are,
Yeah.
those will have an impact on our budget, right?
They will.
Yeah, I think
So-
transportation technology are both in good shape.
Yeah,
And we've done a lot of work on them, so
Right.
I think they're less of a heavy lift.
yep.
I think we spent a lot of time on kindergarten and preschool last year, and it was dragged out for weeks and weeks and weeks. So maybe, I'll circle back with the superintendent on what's the next easier one.
That's fine.
And then you can start to work on the harder ones, because that's not just an exercise in futility. We need to know.
Well, no, and that ties in also with sort of the preparation of the budget, so, because that's something we're starting to work on, so I think that makes sense on several levels.
And so because I think we did athletics first because we had never done a deep dive on athletics.
Okay.
I think we have a little work to do after tonight, but
Right. Yep.
I think transportation and technology is, a lot of that geared will be around what is our preferred state, right? Not the ideal, but what's the
Correct.
preferred? And then I think for the kindergarten and preschool, the early education component is, how are we gonna keep these programs afloat,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
The only thing, and I'm trying to look back to last year, but the only thing I remember when we were, one of the pieces that we were going back and forth with the early childhood education staff and director was, there was at one point discussions about when we normally had information in open houses related to preschool and kindergarten. And at some point, they were, if memory served me, they were closer to January than they were, and then they moved to March.
Yeah.
But then there was also this catch-22 that we were in last year of going out before we had rates set and the back and forth. So I guess in short, as if we're sitting here on November 20th, if an ideal situation is that we have preschool open houses ready to go in January, that
Yep.
that we get a little bit more of a handle on
Yep.
But
the
we-
enrollment piece.
But we solved that by the asterisks on the budget.
Yeah.
No, I understand that.
On the
but-
letter,
But
too.
we still, I also don't want, if part of the issue
That's-
is we don't have enrollment because by the time we went out and said here's our stuff, people had already signed up because they're signing up in January to get their kids into preschool, then I would prefer that we are holding open houses in January.
No,
like everybody else
my
is.
point is, last year there was a delay because people thought they needed the final tuition.
Correct.
And we don't need that unless we think that the tuition is gonna be
Well, and-
significantly
Well, and that's
impacted.
what we kind of need to, right, there's a difference of if we go out and say it's $300 a month and then, oh, sorry, it's $325. But if we're gonna have to go out and say it's $400 because our enrollment's
Yep,
half,
you're right.
then that's.
I'll check, but I do not believe our letters were delayed last year
It was
by
the year
more
before.
than a week at most. But I can double check on that because we had the caveat in there that these rates are subject to change. So
Right.
I don't
There was a
think
delay
that
one
was
year.
the reason we have lower enrollment, that people had signed up elsewhere. It might be true for a couple of families, of course, but generally, lower birth rates in town, which NESDEC had predicted. That's the reality of where the population is right now, and we're hoping to see the rebound of those birth rates and kids entering the schools. I think the new building will help with attracting new families, and Glen Ellen will help to have turnover of housing so that housing is available to young families, but I'm not sure.
Good.
Yeah, it was 2 years ago because my daughter was going to preschool that year.
It was 2 years, I think it was 2 years ago.
Hard to figure out what to do because we didn't hear back from the public school system until very late. So I was like holding 2 spots. So we need to do that sooner with both extended day and preschool.
I think we can work on that. I've made a note on that, because I'm used to doing it early as well, because it is the one area we kind of are in a competitive market.
So I think when we say early childhood, it's not exactly early, but we should include preschool, kindergarten, and then extended day.
Yep.
Because some of those are, that extended day is connected to both of those programs, and I know that there are older kids in there, but I think that's a natural grouping that we should look at.
And extended day has some unique issues for us here because it's ours, but it's not ours, in a sense, so.
It is ours. We sign the bills. We do not, you've heard that from someone, it is ours. It is not a parent co-op, it is not a nonprofit, it is a school department program that charges a fee.
I welcome from an accounting standpoint is really more what I'm referring to.
Well, several years ago, I worked very hard to try to get that into micro budget, and there was reluctance at all levels, so
Yep.
that's something we should be doing as we look at our new system, so
Yep.
that's not a reason not to.
The other question that Mark raised this afternoon, I did get a chance to look at it. He raised the issue about the fund balance in Fund 70, school choice. And I went back and looked, and if you'll recall, in mid-July, I think it was, I proposed to you as a committee some transfers and suggested at that time that the fund balance in Fund 10 was going to probably be around $110,000. And then as I was going through both the different funds and also some of the machinations with micro-budget, as you call it, RDA as I call it, and again, other things as I sometimes call it, basically what ended up is when we finally got to a final point, that fund balance in Fund 10 was $186,000. And so obviously we're not going to turn that back. That's the amount of money we took from school choice and put into expenses in Fund 10. So that is part of that increase that was in the school choice fund. That's part of the difference. And then I believe when we actually audited, or not audited because the audit's still going on, but when we actually refined some of the actual expenditures that were taken out of school choice itself, that is part of that difference that makes up that fund balance difference. The other thing is I went back and looked at the projection that I had done.
Yep.
And I think there's some differences in some of those projected expenditures that I had done in mid-August for you folks.
Was that the one-page
Yeah, that
sheet?
one-page sheet that I had done.
Can we get an update of that when you're ready for?
Yeah. Yeah,
That's a helpful sheet.
Yeah. And so, for example, one of the things, for example, and I noted it here, is the numbers that I've projected or that I've put in the revenue side of this are the actual numbers from the cherry sheet that have come forward this fall. Now, those numbers may change again come springtime, because that's usually one of the numbers that may get refined based on, our actual numbers, obviously, throughout the year. And then the other thing that I did mention, and this is an issue that, it's a small issue in school choice, but it nonetheless is an issue, and the new town finance director and I are working through this, and we'll figure out how to solve it, and we'll get back to you with our solution, is that right now, there's a small amount of money in school choice that's actually related to food service. And it shouldn't be there. And again, much of what we have to deal with over the next, probably couple years is to develop the appropriate procedures to put in place, and this is one of them, and so we'll get it straightened out.
So one last request from you, Terry.
Yes.
Could you update the length of the columns for the footnotes? Your footnote on 1 and 2 got cut off.
Oh, they're supposed to be wrapped. I'm sorry.
They're not wrapped, but it says with all in likelihood, well, it just depends what you have in there. Maybe you don't need to resend it, but this means that an estimated.
Transferred to school choice.
Will likelihood be need to what?
That in both of those, it's 1 and 2. That's where I mentioned that those two, because the projected revenues may be below what the expenditures are at the moment, that they would be, we may need to propose to you to transfer the difference into school choice if the expenditure and the revenue patterns stay the same.
Okay.
Now, again, the revenue may increase and the expenditure, we may be able to impact to some degree.
Okay. Any other questions?
And so if I just go back quickly, I'm good on the difference
Yeah, and I knew it was there in my head, but when I emailed you back, I just couldn't remember the specific numbers.
Thank you, Terry.
All right.
Happy Thanksgiving to you.
Happy Thanksgiving to all of you.
All right, next on the agenda, we did the budget update, revolving accounts, we did the NASDAQ award, November enrollment.
Very quickly, you have November enrollment in your packets. The slight decline of 4 students and those 4 students were choice students because we had a family who was choicing in with 3 students that now moved to Millis, so they are no longer choice students. And then another family that moved, they moved from they were choicing in from one town, and they moved further away, so they can no longer choice to Millis. So generally, our choice numbers start going up about now versus we've declined by 6 instead of going up, but we anticipate those going up a little bit as the year goes on. Otherwise, we also have 1 more student in and out of district placement.
The extended day annex, do we have an update?
Yeah. Not off the hook yet.
Brief update. Basically, I'll wait till I get to a microphone.
Okay.
We couldn't get it quite done for this meeting. I apologize for that, but on December 4th, I believe, we have company coming in to look at the annex and look at the site, and they will both give a firm estimate on move and hookup of the annex, but they'll also give us an estimate for their company for a new unit. And then I also have a second company that I've been worked with before that does new units, and they're also going to give us an estimate again on the multiple sites we've looked at here on this property for a new unit. We probably won't have either of those numbers for your first December meeting, but we will for the second December meeting.
Okay.
So that's where we are on the annex.
Okay, thank you. Is that it for you, Nancy?
That's it.
You're good?
Thank you.
Okay, chairman's report at 8:25. Not really. Strategic planning, we went through our first kind of review. It went well. Like I said, I will circle back with Nancy and Terry, but I think we should probably do transportation and maybe technology while you're working on the early childhood piece. I think it seems like that's the logical and prioritized step.
I do believe also that Terry and Dr. Marks have been meeting, and they will be ready to present because those numbers are easy. We were hoping to have our NASDAQ trends report back by December, so we'll see. But I think she's very prepared to present
actually,
next meeting.
Depending, maybe we can do transportation because there's a big tie-in between that. I mean, that transportation, we've done transportation so many times. It's not going to be an hour and a half thing.
Right.
So I'll let you be the judge of that. But I think transportation's a short one, and then the SPED would be the first time that we're doing that. I'll forward you. Well, we gave you all of the questions. Okay. Okay. And then the budget process, this is I put those as standard holds on my report, and we started, whether we acknowledge it or not, the FY20 budget process tonight, right? And so to try to be as strategic as possible. So that's where we stand. Subcommittee reports, the Elementary School Building Committee. Please, come on up.
Seeing how I was just there. I think a couple of things. The new phone system, both for Clyde Brown and for this building, which was part of the warrant article, are in process. If you don't know, there's a contract option for us that we're trying to desperately take advantage of, which is a 2-for-1 option. if we sign a contract, we won't have the installation, we don't need the installation done before December 31st, but the contract being signed before December 31st. So we finalized the information that we need to put forward to the vendor for that contract proposal. So we hopefully will see that back early after Thanksgiving. So that is one thing. The FF&E, or the furniture purchasing, I can't commend Jason and Jen Littlefield, our architect, enough for all the work they did on the furniture with the collaborative purchasing program for MSBA, because we were well ahead of the curve. We've been ready to do this for a while, including being able to analyze some of the collaborative purchasing and understand that there are certain areas where we'll be better off to go on our own. We'll not only get the furniture we want, but we'll save money. So we're basically ready whenever MSBA and these other school districts get their act together. And the technology, because you don't install the technology typically until you have the desks and chairs in place, is a little bit behind, but that is basically, we've got work finishing up on that, and I want to say December 12th is going to be our next technology meeting on those items. There was a change order which I expect was going to be approved tonight, that among other things, and maybe the most significant thing, was going to take a area on the second floor C building, I think it's C building, that was basically going to be dead space under a stairwell and make it into storage primarily for extended day. And that's one of the reasons I was late, is to weigh in on it. And basically my answer to them was very simple. You can never have enough storage in school. So, building committee was certainly supportive of it if we were, and John and I both said absolutely. Now's the time to do it, because it would cost us 3 times that much to do it later on.
Are there any issues with the contracting for, or the process for the phone system? Are we good?
We've had some coordination issues. I think we've worked them out.
Okay.
I think it's a little unusual for me because I'm your procurement officer, and I'm used to dealing directly with vendors, and I'm not dealing directly with this vendor at this point in time, though I think we worked out some of that this evening. And so that, I think, is changing.
If at any point, as our procurement officer and as our business manager, you need to talk to the vendor or you need to have a conversation, I will talk to the chair of the other committee to make sure that I know we're doing a 2-for-1, but they don't make decisions for the school.
And I think we've worked that out. I
Okay.
think we made them understand that there are pieces of this that are the building committees, and there are pieces of this that are the school committees. And we're all trying to work together, and we are. But we just need to understand that there are pieces of this that, as the procurement officer, and because they're going to affect the FY20 budget, and they're going to affect long-term, obviously, the phone system, because once it's all installed, I'm going to be the one who's going to get the phone calls, excuse the pun, when something doesn't work right. That I think we worked that out this evening. I think everybody's on the same page now, and we're good to go.
If you have any concerns at all, please let
Okay,
us know.
I appreciate that.
Okay, thank you, Terry.
Okay.
Are we done with Terry? We kind of make
Yes.
him walk back and forth. All right,
I think you're finished.
correspondence. Nancy.
I'd like to commend Patsy Divert, our school librarian at our middle high school, who has been chosen to serve as the Metro West Area Co-Director on the Executive Board for this year for the Massachusetts School Library Association. Patsy also has presented at a Rhode Island conference on the activities of her Library Youth Council, and has been invited to present at the Massachusetts School Library Association Conference, and she'll be bringing the students from the Youth Council, I believe, to present with her. She's done a great job, and so in your package you have a letter saying basically she's been appointed to the executive board, And we appreciate all her efforts in that.
That's good.
And then the other correspondence is a nice article in the Millis Medway News about the commissioner's visit to our middle school and the time he spent there, with a little synopsis of some of the very rich, hands-on, deep project-based learning that he was, that the students were engaged in.
Okay.
That's it.
Any announcements? Carrie, Robin, Mark? Okay. Any old business or new business? I think we've done enough business tonight. And then we are going to go into executive session to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining with Millis teachers and clerical. So I need a motion to go into executive session, not to return to open session. And that will be a roll call vote.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr. Conroy.
I make a motion to adjourn to executive session to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining with Millis teachers and clerical, and not to return to open session.
Second.
A motion been moved and seconded. This is a roll call vote. I am aye. Ms. Roach?
Aye.
Ms. Briggs?
Aye.
Mr. Conroy? All right, that is it. Good night. Happy Thanksgiving.